All right, so we'll get started here for today's webinar. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for all coming to today's webinar. Today's webinar is called What's the Difference? Model Compare. So what we're going to be looking at is going to be a tool from CTC software that is called Model Compare, and we're going to see how that can be used in our everyday projects that we are working with. My name is Patrick Siemek. I'm a technical consultant at SolidCAD on the AEC team. And today I'll be going through a webinar to show you today on how we could use a tool called Model Compare from CTC software that can help us during the workflows of our projects. So with Model Compare, exchanging models between architects, engineers, and other types of disciplines can create issues. Who changed what? What was changed? Did anything change? So figuring out that information can make it a little bit difficult to understand. So the Model Compare tool will assist with identifying any changes to the models to help eliminate any interruptions for design and engineering. The Model Compare tool, which we'll see shortly here with a demo, Model Compare is used to compare the same Revit file at two different points in time to identify differences. Model Compare works by taking data or snapshots of Revit files, which are then used to generate comparison results. By utilizing snapshots, there is no need to retain full copies of Revit project files as a project progresses. So today's learning objectives, we're going to see how we could access the Model Compare tool, look at the Model Compare interface and how we could modify some of the different settings as we work through it. We're going to be taking snapshots of Revit models, which are then used to generate comparison results. And finally, we're going to see how we can compare the results in a spreadsheet format. So with that said, let's already jump into the live demo. So one of the things that we have here, I'm going to go from the kind of MEP engineering standpoint where here we have a Revit model, an MEP model that we see. But as the project progresses, as we get different types of models from structural engineers or consultants, from architectural engineers and consultants, things do change. And how can we identify those? So within this MEP model that we see here, it's just a floor plan, second ground floor. I can see already my ducting, some of my plumbing elements that are in place. But as the model changes, how do we know what changes? As I move through here, just into my other types of projects, here's the architectural file that was linked in to the MEP model. From here, looking at some of the different views that we have on the ground floor plan, we have just like a little medical center. Here we have some walls in place, exam room, taking a look at exam room 1-3. And if I look a little bit further at exam room 3-3, changes will be made. So if this was the original model that I have linked into my project, but as the project progresses, things do change and things update, I want to be notified about those changes. Let it be if the consultants will be providing that information, or a lot of times we just want to verify what has been changed. So those things may be a little bit difficult to kind of translate or to track as we're working through. So we're going to see how we can use the actual Model Compare tool to establish those tools. So just from this model that I'm using here, exam room 1-3, exam room 3-3, we can see just big openings of those rooms. If I go to my second floor plan, here we also have additional rooms. And if I come here to the bottom right, we have some washrooms. With this model, as it is going to be updated, kind of working forward, I'm now going to a second type of model. Let it be, this is the progress model as we're working with. If I look now to where that original exam room 1-3 was, we can now see it has been now split into two separate rooms with new furniture also in place. Same as the other exam room, it has been split into place and now made two rooms from that original one. If I were to jump to the second floor, that washroom that we originally saw that was kind of empty, as I zoom into here into this kind of location, we can now see that it has been filled. We have some additional plumbing fixtures that have in place. We also have walls and doors. So how can we track this information that we are working with as we do get these models into our project? This is where we could use the tool called Model Compare. So Model Compare, let me just close out of some of these projects here. Model Compare, it is a tool from CTC software. It is going to be found underneath the BIM project suite. So again, here we can see a different list of suites, but the one we're looking at here is going to be the CTC BIM project suite. And within this tab, we're going to see our tool model compare. So what the model compare will do, it will take snapshots of our projects at different times. So thinking about, we had one originally, and then say 2 weeks later, we have a new updated model. So we want to compare any changes that have been done. So I'm going to select this model compare tool to initiate the function. As we open up the tool, this will be our interface that we are working with. Don't have too much information right now inside of here, but we can start working through our options. Starting with taking a snapshot. So if we look at the very top left, I could start by taking a snapshot of the current project. So I've already kind of pre-taken snapshots to kind of speed up the process as it does work through here. But if you were to take a snapshot of a project, so I select take snapshot, give it a second or two to open another dialog box. At the very top, you will then select where do you want this snapshot to be saved. So you're just selecting the browse options, looking for a location on your local machine or within the server, saving that snapshot. It will be also provided with a date timestamp to making sure we have the differences here. Once you select the location where you would like this file to be saved, we now want to select what information do we want to be a part of this snapshot. So with this tool, it is taking a snapshot of the project. It is not going to take a whole, let's just say 200 megabyte Revit file and saving it with that information. It's just taking a snapshot with the information that's needed on its own separate file format. What to include? So we do have this tab now, what to include. On the left side, what categories do we want to be included? Here you'll see a list of many different types of categories, from model categories to annotation categories. You can pick and choose whatever type of category that you'd like to use for your snapshots. At the bottom, you could include, or you could start adding and removing any type of category that you want to establish that specific setting type. You could have different settings for different types of snapshots. Let it be an architectural model snapshot, interior or exterior, maybe a structural model compare setting that you would want to use, maybe one for mechanical, electrical, plumbing. You can make different types of settings with different values being placed into there to create different types of snapshots. So once you select the categories to include on the left side, then we can see the data types that we could also include. From that snapshot, we could select families and types, family instances and groups, family parameters that are going to be taken from the project itself, other types of data types that you'll see, line pattern data, project information, project parameters. You can start picking and choosing simply by unchecking and checking on the different data that you want to be part of your snapshot. There is also slope parameter values. So these are additional parameters that you actually do not see just out of the box of Revit. This will be something similar as a coordinate. So if I just take a look at the slope parameters, here you'll see a list of different parameters that, again, you don't see every day inside of Revit, but they are there and can be also generated within that snapshot. So as you select the categories that you like part of your snapshot, the data type that you like to include, you can then also filter out even additional information as needed. We can start taking these snapshots. I'm not going to take the snapshot, so the more information that you are gathering, the longer the process will take to accumulate all that information within the snapshot. So you can start filtering out what information is needed for your specific option. I've already presetted a setting, so I'm just going to go to my settings, which I've saved out one of my options, just model compare architectural coordination. I'm going to select open here. So from the selected settings that I had on the left side, just some basic categories I've included for my MEP workflow. I want to know the information about ceilings, levels, lighting fixtures, mechanical equipment, plumbing fixtures, views, and walls. So when things do change, I want to get that information associated back to me so I can compare. The data types that I've included the families and types, family parameters. Did not have any line pattern data, so I unchecked that option there. Other options that are also unchecked, warnings, imports, and links data. So again, as you can see, you could add a lot of information to your snapshot. The more information, the longer the snapshot will take. But then also you can start filtering out the things that you do need or you do not want as you're working through. Once you have these specific options in place, you could also, at the top of the tool, where do you want to search? So as you do take a snapshot, maybe you don't want to go through a whole project and look for all that information. Maybe you do want to search by a level. So here you could individually search by levels. If I just uncheck this here, you would be able to search by the different levels inside of that project and then start selecting the ones as needed. As I move down the list, you could search by phase, phase created, phase demolished, phase existed. So we do have those options here. Also, you could search by specific views. You can search all the views, search the active views, or search only the specific views. So again, you're filtering out what data do you want to accumulate once you take the snapshot. You could also go through design options as you are taking that information. Once you have that all set, you're just simply selecting take a snapshot, and then it will start saving those settings. In my case, I already saved the settings there from two different times of a Revit project. So once you do take the snapshot, it's going to come back here to show you the snapshot itself. Here we have an example. This is the type of file format that it will come as. So here we have the name of the project that I took a snapshot, the date, and also the time. So these are the snapshot files that we're going to be using with. I do have two snapshot options. So I have one for the arced changed model and then one from the original one. So if we do want to compare these elements or these projects inside of the tool, once you close out and taking the snapshot, at the very top, you have a comparison option. You can open a previous one, you can save your comparisons, or in our case, we're going to create a new comparison. As I click new comparison at the very top, you start selecting where do you have those snapshots. So I'm going to browse within my location here to take that first snapshot, browse to look for that second snapshot. Again, same project, but at two different times with some changes within it. If your snapshots did have different filtering options, there's actually an option over here that will actually highlight in red that the differences between the snapshots have different filter settings. Then you could also use this option here to kind of see what differences are within those filter settings. So again, you can start matching things or seeing what information will not be compared together. Before I start selecting these to compare these snapshots, we can then even furthermore, what do we want to compare? So initially we did take a snapshot with all the information that I wanted to include from categories to the data types. So that is inside of that snapshot now. But now when I compare, I can start selecting, do I want to compare different family categories? Do I want to compare model categories or annotation categories? So you can start picking and choosing what exactly do you want to compare. You don't have to compare everything from the snapshot. You could just take those specifics of what you would need. You could also do the same for your parameters. What types of information do you want to pick up that is part of that snapshot? So again, initially you have that snapshot with a lot of data stored inside of it. Once you start comparing that data, you can start picking and choosing what data that you want to compare. In my case, I'm going to keep everything selected to see what we have been able to compare to. And I'm going to click OK to compare the two files. So once the system runs comparing the two different files, now we're going to start to see graphically the changes. So once we select the compare option, we have now our different tabs, starting with some general information. So from here, we can see we have some different color coding to identify what has been changed within the project. At the bottom right of our model compare tool, there is a color legend. So we can see things that are equal, what is different that is in yellow, what has been added that is blue, what has been removed that is red. So right now in the general information, we could see different types of options to verify the differences. You could go from levels, grids, different types of views, the amount of families that are there. So anything in green that is equal from one project to another. Here we can see model objects. There has been a difference of 256 to 240 from the different projects. You could see when the project was last saved, what is the file name. So a great tool to kind of start identifying and seeing the differences of your project. So as we move from the general information, going to go to elements now. Within this elements location, we do have, again, some filtering options. At the bottom left, we can start filtering out what is equal, what is different, what is non-existent. And also with the parameters, what is equal, what is different, what is non-existent. To make things a little bit easier, right now with equal, everything in green, that's going to be the exact same from the other project. I want to know what is different. So I'm going to uncheck the equal option. Let's start looking through now what has been modified. As I expand model categories, here I can start to see now what types of model categories have been or are different from the previous project. As I expand walls, we can start to see now different color coding. So again, things that were different are in yellow, but now things that are in blue, it's things that have been added. We can start to see what type of wall has been added. You also have your identifier, which is your element ID, which is searchable within Revit. And then from one model to another, as we can start to see the type of walls that are there. The first one did not have the wall at all. The second project, we can see that it has been added at a certain wall type. You can start expanding the model elements. So as I'm selecting the plus button, so we'll start to see elements that have been added, and then the data that is associated with it. As you select your element, you can have the option to kind of view it inside of the project. So right now it is ready for me to kind of view in place. I'm going to cancel here. Let's select another wall here in place. Selecting this wall, there is an auto zoom automatically already selected. So when I select an element from my comparison and I go back to my project, it'll actually zoom in to that location. So as you start selecting your different elements, you can start to see it'll start auto zooming to where that element has been located. So a great way to see what has been added, what has been removed. As I start looking, we can see what walls have been added to my project. If I go to my plumbing fixtures, here we can see things have been removed, things have been added. As I select one of the plumbing fixtures that have been removed, it'll bring me to that location where it has been removed in place. Or if I click a new one, it'll bring me to where that element is. So again, a great way to kind of help you identify and quickly identify the changes that are within the project and seeing it kind of translated back inside of your views. You can start expanding the elements and the categories. Oh, it's gonna not go to that one. So ceilings as an example. Here we can see there are some differences within the ceilings. And as I start expanding the ceilings, there's some constraints. In this specific type, as you can see, it is still the same ceiling, but what changed? The height offset from level change. So again, a great identifier that will allow me to know that the ceiling height has changed, which can dictate now my modeled elements that I have in my project. So we've changed from a 9-foot initial ceiling height to an 8-foot 8-inch height ceiling. So a really great tool that we can start to see in identifying the changes from one project to another. As I move down my list, so these are my elements, my model category elements that I was looking for my snapshot to take that information. As I go to parameters, now we can start to see different types of parameters. We can see ones that are equal, different, or non-existent. You can start expanding these elements in place. So as I start expanding these options, so again, there's a flow pressure option, since I now have added a few different plumbing fixtures. If I go to dimensions, there is new area locations. Start expanding this in place. Now different areas based off of the specific changes that have been made. So we have the different areas based off of now the addition of the walls or the modification of the walls. We can see those changes and the actual values that they are changing at. So as I keep working through here, you can start selecting your elements, seeing it in the back of your project. And the final option is we can see the report in a spreadsheet view. So from this report, it'll give you all that information that you were kind of just looking through right now before, general information, my elements, my parameters, but now in a spreadsheet format. So as I keep scrolling down, we can see that information that we have in place, and it'll start to identify those options. From the spreadsheet format, you can see we do also have our element IDs, which you could then go back into Revit and automatically find yourself, which, as an example, if I take an element ID here, I could highlight it, copy it inside of Revit. Underneath the Manage tab, you got Select by ID. As you click inside of there, I could select this option. Selected the ID. It is my 2x2 ACT system. which now I can see inside of my product and has that value of 8 foot 8 inches. So here you'll have the spreadsheet format with all of your comparisons based off of the snapshots that you have taken. With this spreadsheet format, you can also save it. So as I select Save Report, I can locate it to where I want it to be. I'm going to click Save, and I'm just going to click Yes to open it to show you how that will be shown. Exactly the same way that you see it inside of Dual, it'll now just be saved as an Excel format. And from here, you have all the information that you could utilize and compare. Let it be a Revit user or even a non-Revit user, seeing the changes that have been done between the models and utilizing the element IDs to verify back inside of the project. So with these options that you have in place, as you can see, starting from taking a snapshot of your project, so you could have different setting types. So I just click take a snapshot again. Where would you like to save the snapshot? What is going to be included in your snapshot? So what categories do you want to have selected? Here right now, all categories are selected. You can modify this to have specific categories, the ones that you just want to pick up information on. Based off of those categories, other types of data that you want to include, families and types, family parameters, work set data, schedule data, project parameters. You can also add those options there. Additional filtering option to specific parameters can also be added. And finally, where do you want to search those values for that snapshot to take that information? With this information, you can also save these settings. So the next project that comes along or the next file that you do get provided and you want to make that comparison, have with those saved settings, simply just load them, take the snapshot, and from there, once the snapshot is taken, you can see we could utilize the tool to then compare the changes within the projects. General information, we got our elements, model categories in place here, any parametric data that has been modified, and also that final report that we could utilize to see directly from the tool, or you could save it out to your Excel format. So that will kind of conclude the demo for today. So in conclusions, Model Compare is used to compare two Revit files at two different points in time to identify differences. Snapshots are taken of a model, which are then used to generate comparisons, as we saw within the demo itself. By creating snapshots, there's no need to retain full copies of Revit models. So as we just saw, the snapshots, it's just taking a very small value of information that you are selecting within the settings and then saving that as a file. No need to save a full Revit model and then comparing it with different types of tools as needed. And also, as mentioned, you could save comparison settings to use across multiple projects and disciplines. So how to obtain the CTC tools or the CTC tool that we just saw today, Model Compare. You can obtain the tool at ctcsoftware.com. And if you go onto the web page, underneath the products location, you will see a list of different products and you'll see the BIM project suite, which is where the tool is located. You can download the suite itself. There are some free tools, there are some paid tools. If you download the suite itself, you will have a trial to utilize the tools, again, test them out as needed, so you can get the tools from there. Also, you can contact me directly, so patrick.siemek@solidcad.ca. I can provide you more information on how to obtain those tools for the Model Compare or any other tools that you'll see in the CTC suites. So in conclusion, thank you for all coming to today's webinar. My name is Patrick Siemek, technical consultant with SolidCAD on the AEC team. Feel free to reach out to me at patrick.siemek@solidcad.ca with any types of questions or additional information that you may need. This webinar will also be recorded and posted on SolidCAD's YouTube page, so you can go back and look at that video itself in the coming days once it is uploaded there.